It doesn't feel real, but the New Orleans Saints finally win a game. We're talking about that and so much more on a Monday edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to a brand new edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. Make sure you check us out on social media. Just search Louisiana Lunch Hour and subscribe to us today. Also check us out on YouTube. Just again, search Louisiana Lunch Hour. It is just that simple. And it's really fun because most weeks we have a ton to get to. Again, this was a very light schedule in terms of the games going on this past weekend. Again, Monday's usually our weekend wrap up. And we like to go winners first. And New Orleans Saints, welcome to that winning side of the conversation. We like winners first. We like positivity. And there's a ton to like from this Saints victory over the New York Giants for the first time in the 2025 season. And for the first time in his career, the New Orleans Saints and Spencer Rattler get a dub on the board. And it's refreshing because we've been talking about it. Like Spencer Rattler, I think a lot of people weren't necessarily sold on what he's been able to do. But when you look at his stats, and I was surprised by this in a conversation I had with somebody yesterday afternoon, because it's just something you don't think about when you're 0-4. Spencer Rattler does not have a single interception on the board yet this season. Again, knock on wood right now, we're sitting at no interceptions through 5 games. You're sitting at 1-4. Spencer Rattler looked pretty decent yesterday afternoon inside Caesars Superdome. 21-31, 225, and a touchdown through the air. Obviously, you had Taysom Hill. He's back in the town. And I was impressed by what I saw from, Spencer Rattler. I need to do more of a deep dive into the game because admittedly had some things going on, was in and out of watching the game most of the afternoon, caught bits and pieces, but I loved what I saw from him. That phenomenal bomb he threw to Rashid Shaheed. First off, Shaheed is probably going to go down as one of the best wide receivers just in terms of pure impact. The second he touches the ball, points are put up on the board. It's nothing short of impressive. Every single time we see him get things done. Like going back to that, it was late in the first half. I was sitting around talking with somebody. All of a sudden, I just see Shaheed just hauling ass off of a touchdown. Then I'm like, oh, cool, touchdown. But then I go back and watch the play. This was like a pass from, I want to see the PFF on this play itself, like the next gen stats, because Rattler pretty much throws this thing from his own 10-yard line, and Shaheed catches it at the Giants' 40-something yard line. This was an absolute bomb that got thrown into his hands, and he just took it to the house. That's what you need to see from this Saints team more frequently. A hell of a play right there. And it was at the perfect time with about a few minutes left in the first half. You get that touchdown, the game changes. They were able to get a nice, quick 5-and-out, followed by a missed field goal, a fumble, and then a field goal to end the first half. So that alone, that into the first half, like the final 5 or 6 minutes, changed the outcome of this game in my mind. They should have won by more, because you look at this team, and it's very similar to what we saw a few weeks ago with LSU taking on Florida. You had 5 turnovers, including one was a scoop and score. And again, I'm just bringing up observations of what I saw in the game as it happened. I want to see more of the film and kind of break it down more probably on Tuesday's pod. This was a defensive effort that I've been waiting to see from the team because they've been good. Like, we're never going to hate on this Saints defense. Are there some things that they could have done better at like this season? Absolutely. But Jonas Sanker, he's been one of the biggest surprises, and it's a pleasant surprise. Seven total tackles, 6 solo, a TFL, and a fumble recovery for the young man. Cam Jordan got a nice fumble. Jordan Howden got the scoop and score in the second quarter that really kind of changed the outcome of the ball game. But then we also got to give a shout out to one Kool-Aid McKinstry. It is time for the Kool-Aid man to eat. And I think now we can definitely say we're drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to this secondary. And that was something I don't think a few weeks ago we were willing to have that conversation about. I liked what I've seen. This was one of those games the Saints had to win. I said it a lot on the pod on Friday, especially with Taysom Hill possibly coming back into the fold this weekend. Lo and behold, he got some playing time. You need him to be healthy. You need this team to be firing off on all cylinders, because if you don't, it is going to be a long afternoon, especially when the Giants faithful was out in full force. Like, there were people popping up at that game. It wasn't as outnumbering as, let's say, the game a few weeks ago with San Francisco, but you can definitely feel the energy was a little bit more towards Big Blue than maybe it should have been in recent years. We've seen the fan base kind of dwindled. Hopefully, this is what you need to see. Again, people will probably hate the fact that the Saints won a game, which is a dumbass thing to say. I will gladly be one of those people that is going to deride that section of the fan base that wants this team to tank. I don't believe you can consider yourself a true blue Saints fan if you want to see this team struggle. If you want to see this team, not win a game. At the end of the day, I just wanted to win a game. Like, a few weeks ago, I didn't think this team had a chance to win a game. 3 weeks ago, you were getting your ass handed to you by the Seattle Seahawks. You had 2 really close ball games. Right now, all things considered, if balls bounce a certain way, you are probably sitting at 3-2. Again, I think we can say that about a lot of teams. I think that speaks to what the NFL is all about. You are probably a couple balls bouncing a different way from being 3-2, but now you're sitting at 1-4, excuse me. That says something about the league and how difficult it is to win ball games. You have to be damn near perfect to win ball games, especially if you're a Saints team that hasn't necessarily been able to show a whole lot of promise because of a mixture of things, because of injuries. You've got a relatively inexperienced QB, but he is getting better. Again, I've got to go back and look at the plays and look at, more importantly, how things were executed. Taysom Hill showed himself to be that spark plug again, and you absolutely needed him to be there. It was not much. I mean, Taysom Hill only had 6 carries, -1 yards, but the one pass he had was 19 yards. That was a really nice pass, too, if we're being completely honest with each other. And again, this is Taysom Hill's first game back in 2025 after being on the IR. Even Foster Moreau, he had some really good moments in the game, too, more so on special teams, but you like what you're seeing from this program, from this franchise. It's like, hey, maybe you could win more than one game, and maybe, just maybe, you have a chance of beating the New England Patriots on Sunday. I was watching some of the Sunday night game where they pulled off the upset. They were the ones that helped the 1972 Miami Dolphins pop the champagne, and you definitely kept that team competitive just a week ago. Who's to say we don't see something similar in about 6 days' time from this point of the taping of the pod. And I'll end off the Saints talk by calling out BS. I will always do that. The BS meter is always on in my house. You have to say that roughing the passer call was absolute like hogwash. There was no reason why that should have been called. It was the wrong call from the word go. I was talking with my dad, who has been an official in the high school ranks, but he was saying, and he is very much, understanding of officiating calls. He's been watching football for twice as long as I've been alive. Let's put it bluntly. But whenever you look at that was a complete and utter malpractice of a call. Again, it thankfully it did not result in a win for the Giants, because I think if it did, the Saints fan base would still be pretty pissed and vindicated in hating the officiating of football games. Even though that was really the only win over the weekend for a Louisiana team. We did get one other win. I'm not going to hate on Southeastern. They were the only other team in the state of Louisiana this past weekend to come away with a victory. Again, it was a very light slate this past weekend. You had UL Monroe at Northwestern. We'll talk about them later. Nichols, Lamar, McNeese, Southeastern, Northwestern State, East Texas A&M. So lo and behold, you only have four other games revolving around Louisiana teams, two of them playing each other. And Southeastern, the Lions, how about this? 4-2 to start the season, and steamrolled the Cowpokes 38-0 behind a pretty good performance just in terms of the amount of carries he had versus the amount of touchdowns he had. 5 carries, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns for DeAndre Jackson, including a 45-yard scamper. Nothing short of impressive from the Lions running back. And this was just dominance from the word go. You had McNeese kind of let things go pretty early on. You had a punt, interception on the third play for Jake Strong, who is kind of underwhelmed after a strong start to the 2025 season. He got intercepted. Then you had Southeastern. They got a pick 6 off of that. McNeese punts, touchdown for the Lions, 14-0. Another interception for Strong, followed by a touchdown in the second quarter. Punt, touchdown. It was just dominance from the word go. Second half, not a whole lot happened. It was just, hey, we're going to go ahead and swap the ball back and forth. But that first half of football, that's all you needed if you were the Lions. You kind of called off the dogs in a sense. But just looking at that game, everything went exactly as you wanted it to be. If you were the Lions, and the Cowpokes was not a great look for that program. Meanwhile, sticking in the Southland Conference, Kendon Fugile, hopefully I'm getting the name right, he was the difference maker with an 88-yard punt return late in the ball game to help Lamar get past Nichols. Deuce Hogan, he looked pretty decent under center, 166 yards, no interceptions, no touchdowns, which again, it's kind of a little strange, but Shane Lee was the big performer of the game. 3 carries, 109 yards, including a 75-yard march down the field. That was kind of crazy to see. Overall, this Nichols team, we talked about a lot. This is one of those teams that's going to have a lot of growing up to do. And it's mainly because you are replacing a longtime head coach, and now things are kind of changing. Hopefully they can kind of get that stuff resolved into next season, because I don't want to see the Tommy Rybecki era be a short-lived one, because it's very tough to fill the shoes of a long-standing head coach like Tim Rebowe. And we'll keep going with a conversation about the Northwestern State Demons staying in the Southland Conference. And then we'll get to what happened with the UL Monroe Warhawks against Northwestern. You had East Texas A&M. They dominated. Ron Peace with 268 yards off a 14-19 game. He helped steamroll, the Demons 40-10. Just incredibly one-sided. EJ Oakman, 75 yards off of 17 carries and 3 tutties. 11 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown for KJ Shankle. So safe to say, while the passing game was pretty good, I think the understated part of this game has to be what we saw from East Texas A&M on the ground. Northwestern State couldn't get a whole hell of a lot going. 124 yards passing from Abram Johnston. In your leading rusher, Colby Burrell, 26 yards off of 5 carries and a score. That's not going to get it done. And hopefully they can kind of get that stuff resolved quick, fast, and in a hurry. And we'll close things out with a conversation about Northwestern, not those Demons, the big Northwestern program up in the north, the Wildcats. This was nothing short of dominance. It was close early on, but it definitely got out of hand very quickly with 21 points in the third quarter, really setting the pace up. They were tied 7-7 after one, but the Wildcats were rolling. Preston Stone, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, Caleb Komalafe rushing for 2. Another big performance for Northwestern out of Illinois. Getting it done. Aiden Armenta, 1 touchdown, 129 yards. Solid performance, but you saw a lot from Hunter Herring as well as Landon Graves in there as well. Hunter Herring also really nice. His 1 completion on the day for 48 yards. I think you'll gladly take that if you're in his shoes. Man, I remember when he was with Cajuns for a minute. Everybody kind of talked about him being one of those next big things, but safe to say that did not happen. Hopefully he can find a spot on this roster, especially because after a tough loss, you kind of got to figure out and pick up your legs, especially sitting at 3-2, as you see what happened with the Cajuns a couple weeks ago now against Marshall. They're going to start making their focus towards a huge game against JMU this coming weekend. And we'll get to that and so much more on a big old Tuesday edition of the podcast. We're going to start shifting things over to a little bit more of a back to reality with all the teams that we cover being back in action after a week. Definitely feels a little weird to have those programs have a weekend off, but this pod does not take a weekend off. In fact, I was talking with somebody over the weekend, spreading the good word about the pod over at German Fest, and he asked me, hey man, like how much where can you not check you out, man? I'm like, check us out on Spotify, YouTube. We put all the pods up there. We're eventually going to get around to finally getting a video element to this pod, but we still put it up because it deserves that love. And we're going to wrap up the pod. Make sure you go check us out wherever you get your podcast. Just hit the follow button or subscribe button, and you can get us anytime, any place, anywhere. We'll talk to you mañana with another edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast.